The central thesis is that about every 500 years, for some reason, about every 500 years, Latinized Christianity, or that part of the world that received its Christianity through the Latin language, goes through a major upheaval. I don't care whether you call it an upheaval or a reformation or a tsunami or whatever you call it. About every 500 years, we go through a great whoopee, if that is a better term, all right? That is to say, we're in the 21st century right now, and if you go back 500 years, you hit the 16th century, no surprise to anybody, and we called it the Great Reformation, right? If you go back 500 years from that, you hit the 11th century, and we called it the Great Schism or the Great Schism, according to where your mama grew up and how she taught you to say it, but it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. If you go back 500 years from that, you hit the 6th century and the Great Decline and Fall. And of course, if you go back 500 from that, you hit the 1st century and what's called the Great Transformation or the Great Transition, one or the other. But we're living in the Great Emergence. When I say that it happens not just to the people of God who are involved, and it happens in very specific cultural contexts. That is to say, it happens in that part of the world that was susceptible to receiving its Christianity through the Latin language as opposed to the Syriac and the Greek, or was colonized by those who so received, or was colonialized by those who so received. That is to say, what I have just said sounds a whole lot like westernized world or like first world. Be really careful. That's not true. It's the colonialized and the colonized that also matter. Emergence Christianity came to this continent last. We are the last to receive it. If you want to see it in some of its earlier forms, look, for instance, in South Africa. You can go home and Google Amahoro, A-M-A-H-O-R-O. That's emergence Christianity as it has existed in South Africa for some 40 or 50 years now. Why was it there? Because they had been colonialized by those who received their Christianity through the Latin language. If you want to see it in Malaysia, where it's been quite active for 30 years, it's Malaysia, which I can't spell, but I love to say because it clears the throat. But it's absolutely there. So it comes to us last. What matters is that we understand this is not a first world phenomenon. This is a phenomenon of mindset, if you will. There are many historians, and she always reminds me of this, trained historians, who get really upset about cycles. There is, especially older historians, say, cycles can become historic determinism. Be careful about their being there. And they're absolutely right. Having said that, however, let me also go forth and say that systems theory, which is a fairly new division of science, systems theory has a very complicated mathematical explanation for why we do this thing every 500 years. And they say, absolutely, it will probably continue. What we have to remember about it is that it's not just about religion. Because we are people involved in religion, we tend to see these things in terms of religion. It is instead everything in the society involved changes, including religion. That is to say, the Reformation is better known to us than many other things. So let's take the Reformation. If you will remember, even in high school, when they taught you the Reformation, they said, the Reformation, it is the birth of individualism. It is the coming of humanism. It's the beginning of a new Renaissance. It is the rise of the middle class. It's the institutionalization of capitalism. It's the rise of the nation state, right? Remember all these things? And oh, by the way, it brought us Protestantism. We're in a thing called the Great Emergence, and it's affecting every single part of what we do. And by the way, it's bringing us emergence Christianity, all right? We have to keep the emphasis in the right place. Society informs the religion that exists in it, and religion is informed by and informs the society. It's a two-way street. You cannot separate the two. It is the function of religion to inform and give meaning to the society in which it exists, but it is the function of the society also to shape religion. So you're not going to extrapolate. You're not going to pull Protestantism out of the Reformation. You're not going to pull emergence Christianity out of the Great Emergence. But you have to understand that it's far more than just religion. The great emergence in which we live is simply a time in which everything has so dramatically changed that your grandfather, or at the most your great-grandfather, could no more endure or live in the world you live in right now than he could fly to the moon, right? It has changed that much. It is the great emergence that Thomas Friedman 10 years ago could write a book called The World is Flat, and we all knew what he was talking about. It's the great emergence that you and I, speaking English, have 5 times more words than William Shakespeare had when he wrote the plays, for goodness sakes.